I am so excited today to have Trisha Fenimore on with us, and she has gotten some exciting stuff happening in life. So I want to talk to her about that, and I have lots of questions. And I'm hoping for a lot of really good advice for especially young mamas, but just women that are wanting to go from coasting in their faith or not sure where they stand in their faith and kind of driving them to that next level and what that looked like for you. And maybe we can all learn a little something about that. So, um, Trisha, I'm excited to see everything that's happening on your Instagram. I do not know how I ran across you, but I was so excited when I did. I've followed you for probably several months now and then bought the book, and my mom borrowed my book and loved it. And I hope that all of our listeners here will go out and buy your book as well. It's an amazing book. So
Thank
we're
you.
going to get to that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I'll try to live up to that intro. I'm just a mom here doing some videos, but it's been exciting. I mean, it's been pretty unexpected.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah. So tell us, just give us like a 5 minute little snip. If no one knows who you are and they're brand new and they haven't seen you on Instagram or anything else, what are the takeaways of what life looks like for you?
Yeah, so my name's Trisha Fenimore. I'm just a regular stay-at-home mom, wife, and I felt God call me to start an Instagram a while back. And like Jonah, dragged my feet. His is one of my favorite stories in the Bible because I relate to him so much. Where God's like, "You need to do this," and I'm like, "I'm going to do everything but that, and then I'll
Yeah.
come back to that after I've had enough pain doing what you don't want me to do." And so after kind of dragging my feet and avoiding my Nineveh, so to speak, I started this Instagram, and oh man, was I insecure. I mean, I'm a former atheist. I'm also sober in recovery. And so like there's a lot in my story that doesn't exactly fit within like that nice, tidy, I always kind of call it like the preacher's daughter stereotype of like a Christian woman. Like I'm not exactly a preacher's daughter. You know what I mean? Like, my story is a little bit gritty. There's some past in it, but like I became an atheist at the age of 11. I found God. Or rather, he found me at the age of 23 on my first day of sobriety, and I've been pursuing him ever since. Like I say I went from an atheist to a believer to a Christian, and then after that that was all I needed, man. Like I tried everything else and nothing
Yeah.
works like Christianity. And I just I felt God call me to start this Instagram when I was 34. I'm 35 now. And honestly, like the growth of it has been really, really humbling. Like I made a video recently where it was like, if you visited my page a year ago, you would see like 10 to 12 likes on things. And now, I mean, I'm up to 44,000 people who follow this account.
Yeah.
And it's just been really unbelievable. Like I just share regular things. Like I share things I learn from my kids. I share things in my regular life, like sitting in traffic, things I think of. Here I thought that like no one would want to hear stuff like that because it's so ordinary.
Right.
While I do have these extraordinary parts of my story, like sobriety and seminary school and all that, but it's like, I think so deep down we're all a lot more similar than we are different. And that's one of my biggest takeaways of the account is how much we all have in common in this faith walk that we're all on.
Yeah. I think that, and we've kind of talked about this before, that when we really get to know Jesus, that when that relationship really takes hold of your life and you fully surrender, there's like a change, a shift that happens that is almost like recognizable amongst, like you can meet someone and have a 5 minute conversation and you just know, like, oh my goodness, you have a story to go along with that relationship. I think that there's a lot to the fact that you had said, I'm no preacher's daughter, but I think that sometimes it's when we have turned and done everything in the world, right? We've tried all these different ways that we realize like it doesn't work. It is not peaceful. There is no rest in that. There
Right.
is no love in that. And
Right.
so then when you meet Jesus, you just grab on tight and never want to let go. And yeah, go
Yeah.
ahead.
So I was just going to interrupt to be like, that is, those moments have where I say, God, I am out of ideas. I am out of plans. You show me what you want from me, like for me and from me. Like you show me and I will follow, instead of me dragging him along, trying to get
Yes.
him to follow me. Like, I throw my hands up and I'm like, I'm going to just follow you. Like, it's a
Yeah.
lot easier. I enjoy myself a lot more. And you have way better plans than I do.
Yeah.
I sit here and I think about, as a young woman, the guys I thought were my soulmates who I should marry. And now I look back and no pun intended, I'm like, thank you, God. Like, thank God I did not end up with those guys, all due respect.
Right.
But it's like the one he had for me was so much better when I said, I'm out of ideas. You show me who you want me to be with. It was
Right.
then that he was able to kind of take the reins. And I think that, it's a humbling thing to reach the end of ourselves, but it's so necessary to go to that next level. I once had a friend tell me that any life without God is not going to be successful. And she was sure to point out that means rich, that means famous, that means beautiful, that means anything that the world will tell you is important. Any life without
Right.
God is not going to be successful. And I think we need only look at like celebrities today and, the rate of addiction and suicides in that community to really get with that and to know that and to say, you know
Right.
what, doesn't matter where he leads me. Jeremiah 29:11, his plans are for good and for a hope and for a future and not to harm me. And when we really know that, we will walk out on the water into these unexpected places. Like in my case, Instagram, talking about God, which is kind of ironic because I used to be like one of those internet trolls who would troll people talking about God. I used to be one of those atheists where I'm like, you don't know what you're talking about. And, pride goeth before the fall, right? Here I am
Yeah.
talking about God on social media now.
I think when I see people that do that, I kind of like, it seems sad for me. I just feel like, man, is this how you really want to spend your time? Is just spewing that. I don't know if it was you or someone else that said, I think it is you, that I've used this. If it is you, I've copied it. But if someone is coming at you in that way or just coming onto your page and trolling that way and leaving a comment to say, welcome. I'm so glad you're here.
That's what I
I'm
do.
so glad that
Yeah.
you commented. I'm so glad that you want to be seen here. Right? Like, because
Mm-hmm.
that's it. They truly want to be seen, I think is
Well, and
part of
here,
that.
yes, everybody wants to be seen, right?
Yeah.
Everybody wants to feel significant. And sometimes we try to find significance in a fight because then at least we have somebody's attention,
Yeah.
But my favorite story about this is my very first troll comment that I got on this account. I looked at my husband. I was aghast. I took my phone. I was like, oh, this person, they're coming here with negativity. Should I block them? And my husband paused and just looks at me and goes, Trisha, where else better that they be? An atheist who is so angry and so negative out of all the, I'm like going to cry, out of all the places on the internet that they
Yeah.
could be, they found your page and they're
Yeah.
on your page, a page talking about God and hope and positivity. And he goes, no, I don't think you should block them. I think that they're right where they're supposed to be.
Yeah.
And that is what inspired me to start welcoming them and say, welcome. I'm so glad you're here, with a
Yeah.
smiley face and like, a sunshine or something like that. Not to antagonize anybody by saying like, I'm going to pray for you. Cause as an atheist, that always felt condescending to me, but it's just like, I'm so glad you're here. And, some try to pick a fight, some, never say anything ever again, but some come back and they
Yeah.
say, oh, I was just joking, making fun of your outfit. I was just joking. I thank you so much. That's so nice. I was just joking, and they start backpedaling. And
Yeah.
it's like, it's a very humbling thing to try to try to grow closer in the image of Jesus and try to walk in his footsteps. Because I think that the more we try to walk in his footsteps, at least for me, the more humbled I am that I will never be able to measure up. But like, I will always seek him to try and to use him as an example, you
Yeah.
know?
I think even that simple response is teaching us all, everyone who is following you, when they see it as well, when we're talking about it, and probably you would agree that this has happened in your life, it makes it so much easier when it happens, like when there's something coming at you personally in person, right? Not behind the screen. That
Mm,
then you've kind of trained yourself to say, welcome in anyway. That
right.
response, that heart posture is still the same of saying, I'm glad you're here. Like
Yeah.
like I'm not going to respond harshly or,
Right.
out of hurt because you've kind of gotten used to it even though it's behind the screen. Do you think that that's true?
Yeah, I mean, I think we live in a culture for a lot of different reasons where it's really easy to dehumanize each other. Like I've started doing something where I don't even refer to people who follow my account anymore as followers. It's very dehumanizing. It feels to me like very unpersonal. And so I just say people who follow this account to remind me that there are people behind
Yeah.
every single one of these numbers. There's a person behind every single username. And it's not to say that you need to like make it your mission to evangelize to like that one user who doesn't want
Right.
to, exchange. But it's like when we remember that there's people behind them and like really just to love each other, love your neighbor, treat them how we hope to be treated. And it's like so simple, the teachings of Jesus, but so unbelievably profound in the shift that it creates in my life and how I view others. And like I was saying, like in our society, it's so easy to devalue human life and human beings as, part of a group or part of a political class or part of a socioeconomic class. And it's like, at the end of the day, we're all people. And if we just remember that and like take an identity and like, you know what, we're a lot more similar than we are different. How would I like to be treated if I'm in so much pain that I'm lashing out at a stranger,
Right.
trying to make them feel pain? Because when I was an internet troll, that's what I was doing. And it's like, not everybody wants to be saved, but some of them, it's an attempt to see if they can see kindness. Can these
Yes.
Christians who proclaim kindness and love in the name of Jesus actually do it when they're
Right.
confronted with adversity and confrontation?
Yeah.
Or are they going to be the stereotype and lash out and get really judgmental, and then thereby solidify that atheist reason for why they're not
Right.
going to believe? We have an opportunity to demonstrate Jesus rather than just talk about him.
Yeah. Absolutely. I love that. I love that response. Yeah. And I think what I see more than anything amongst anyone who comes across your page is that you are planting seeds in just an everyday, real life way. You're just planting those seeds of not forcing your faith or your beliefs on anyone, of just planting a seed and letting God do whatever God's going to do with it. And I think that that's what we're all called to do. Um, in in everyone that we come across, in everything that we do, in every platform that we're given, whatever that looks like, whether it's a CEO in a job or if it's a mom at home, whatever it is, that's what we've been called to do, is just plant those seeds and let God grow them however he's going to grow them. And then
Yeah.
I always say, like, water it with love, right? Like, just plant the
Yeah.
seed and water it with love.
And exactly. I mean, I remember before I started this account, I start every day with prayer with my two boys. I have a husband and two boys and a dog. I start every day by leading the boys in prayer. And I remember before I started this account, because there's so much emphasis these days on numbers, even as I introduced myself, I like mentioned how many people follow the account, but it's like before I started the account, I said a prayer to God, and I said, God, if these two little sheep, these two little
Yeah.
boys, two sheep are the only sheep you ever give me to feed. That will be enough, and I will feed them every day diligently and faithfully. If you want to give me more people that I can talk to about you, then great. I've got a lot to say.
Yeah.
But it's like, I think focusing on the one and just focusing on one at a time.
Right.
It's one at a time that Jesus spread his gospel. So that's how I'm going to try to do it too.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so we'll get into it, and this will lead up to some questions about the book. But tell us there's a lot in your story. You've already mentioned bits and pieces of it, but are there like specific things that were pivotal moments in life that maybe in the moment you recognized, or maybe it was later, that gave this huge shift or a huge change that you can look back on and say, that was Trisha before and this is Trisha now? Like, were there some of those things? And then family, friends, people that were around you, how did they perceive that as you were changing? Kind of, what does life look like with those are some being atheist and now on fire for Jesus, being an addict and being sober? Those are huge pivots.
Right.
And so the people that you were with, what kind of response did you get, and what kind of support did you have at that time?
So, man, it's interesting. I have answers that are examples of all over the spectrum of responses, right? I became an atheist at age 11 as a result of some intellectual pride. I had always done well in school, and the teachers told me and put me in all these programs and stuff. And I just kind of figured God never really made sense to me. I hate going to church. It was like the worst part of my week. I talk a little bit about that in my book, in the chapter where I describe the moment I became an atheist. But really, it was more just like, God's never really made sense to me. I've never really felt a connection. I'm pretty smart, and I feel like I can maintain a good enough heart on my own. This is like an 11-year-old thinking.
Yeah.
Like, how hard could that be? And so I was like, I have no use for the concept of God anymore. Like, I had met a girl my age who was an atheist. She told me that they don't believe in God or pray. And that was a pivotal moment, being introduced to atheism and not having a relationship with God of my own that I could fall back on and say, no, but there is a God, because I was kind of just showing up to church, doing the same prayers over and over again, not ever really encouraged to talk to God on my own and develop my own relationship. And so then when the option of atheism came, I was like, yeah, that makes sense. It wasn't until I had lived in the results and the consequences of a truly self-led life. Like, there's a scene in my book's called Pray for Them. And there's this scene where I get to the end, and it's my rock bottom of alcoholism. And I think back to my life and how much promise and how much potential there was. I'd done so well in school. I did so well in sports. I did all these things. What happened, that I could barely hold on to this minimum wage job, getting fired and fired and fired, struggling every day, never, even patching together a week sober on my own after over a year of trying. And it was like, I finally was able to say, I would rather be wrong about God and live than die right. Like, I would rather give that a chance. Like, I would rather say a prayer that maybe he's right. Like the prayer I said and I shared in my book is like, God, I am willing to have been wrong about you my entire life. If you please just help me. And it goes back to that whole, like, I'm out of plans. I'm out of options. I'm out of ideas. You tell me where you want me to go. And so that was my journey in sobriety. And then about a year and a half later, Christianity and I collided, in this fateful moment in Hoboken, New Jersey, where I met Christians who had what I wanted. Like, I met people who were loving and were accepting and were showing the mercy and grace of Jesus Christ that, the stereotype I held of Christians just didn't do,
Right.
And so when I saw it modeled to me, it got me curious. And I think that that's honestly why I take the stance I take about Christianity, where it's like, show them your Christianity. Don't tell them, show them Christianity, and that's been super humbling. And I'll say, I've had so many people who over the years have told me, as my life has gotten better and better and better, they'll come up and say, Trisha, I was praying for you. Like people from my small hometown in the rural Midwest, they'll say, I was praying for you when you were struggling. It's amazing to see what you're doing now. Like
Ah,
friends of mine and like classmates, and it's crazy, and then there have been other people who I've lost along the way as a result as well. I think sometimes people I'm thinking of one friend who I lost when I got sober. He's still alive. But it's just, some people don't want a solution to their problems. Some people
right.
still they're still in that mode of, I'm going to do it myself. I'll figure it out. I've got a plan. Some people don't want this way of life, and that's okay. Part of it is shaking the dust off and going to a town that does have ears to hear, like
Yeah.
Jesus says. And then other people, it's like, I found supported me up to a point when my faith became the primary prevailing
Mhm.
driver in my life. I started to feel um, like I was just not fitting with certain people
Yeah.
anymore. And I don't know if it was because my heart changed. It was never like me, telling them, you ought to hear about this Jesus fella, like it was never that. It was more just, it just wasn't fitting,
Yeah.
like, and so it's sad, but it's like, there are people who you'll lose along the way in your faith, and that's okay. That's part of it. There is persecution that you'll face along the way from internet trolls, former one of them, and that's okay. That's part of it. But on the other side, can I tell you that every friendship, every person that I have lost in this journey, God truly has replaced tenfold, 100-fold. Like I can, it's two digits of people who, like, 2 digits worth of people who I could really count and say that I've lost them in my life because of this faith. But I get to sign on to Instagram every day and see tens of thousands of people walking this
Right.
path beside me and with me and teaching me, like, and in person, I have like the best friends now. They're the most inspiring and positive people. I count you among them, Sandy. And it's like, this is the life we choose as Christians. It's
Yeah.
not saying your life's going to stay the same. It's the promise that it won't.
Right.
But through it all, through the painful seasons of loss, he will turn those ashes into beauty. And I have no testimony to share except for that. Like that's the
Yeah.
primary one.
I think that a lot of times, I remember a few years ago kind of experiencing something very similar. We had moved, the kids and I had moved to Tennessee for a little while, and I didn't know anyone. I had a lot more time on my hands. I didn't have a job at the time. And so I thought, you know what are you going to do with your time? You have choices, right? Like I had choices that I had never had before. I had time that I had never had before. And when I chose to really dig deep into reading my Bible for really the first time ever in my life, and no longer being spoon fed from a pulpit or from someone else in my life, I was actually picking up a spoon and like digging into the Word of God myself. I felt very alone for that same reason. I just felt like I didn't fit with anyone. I didn't feel like I had friends, and maybe that was a little bit because of the move. But I remember at one of those times of just crying, saying, I can't. I don't have anyone. I need someone. And I just remember feeling like God saying, I'm right here. Like
Mm-hmm.
this is the time of me and you. And
Right.
so from that point on, I just remember feeling like when I would feel that loneliness, it was within that loneliness that I knew I really wasn't alone. That
Yeah.
with that loneliness of another human came this one-on-one deep relationship that I was forming with God himself.
Yeah. I
Like
mean,
that relationship.
Absolutely. And I think everybody can relate to the idea of like standing in a crowd of people and feeling all alone. I think that
Yeah.
that's a universal human experience. Um, Whereas, I'm recalling, so I moved out to New Jersey from the Midwest for a guy. Didn't work out. He dumped me. And the year, I don't know, the years that followed, I was alone in a place where I really didn't know anybody. And I didn't know it at the time, but that was when God really was building my foundation of my faith, and that's when I really got with the fact that like I'm never alone,
Yeah.
and it was only going through that wilderness season. I feel like when you talk about like the difference people can see, I always think of it as kind of like a clear-eyedness, but I also think of it as a confidence, and confidence isn't always loud. It's not always
Right.
boisterous, but it's just, sometimes it's the ability to be alone,
Yeah.
knowing that you're not,
Right.
and that was something I learned in that time. And attending seminary school was a big part of that too, because nobody in my life wanted me to go to seminary school, least of all a predominantly Black seminary school in Harlem, where I was the only white student in my class.
Yeah.
Like that's a hard sell to anybody in a person's
Right.
life. I remember I didn't even share which school I was looking at because I hadn't yet found a school. I was dating a guy at the time, and I shared with him that I wanted to go to seminary. And I was thinking he was going to be like, yes, he was Christian. I thought all these boxes were checked. And he was like, that's really weird. I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah.
And so it's like, it really reminds me of that scripture talking about Jesus, like the stone that the builders rejected
Hmm.
became the cornerstone, which is the
Yeah.
most important stone in the structure, and if we are followers of Jesus, then shouldn't we too expect to some extent to be rejected in our walk with him,
Right.
but to be placed in an important position in our societal structure, perhaps, to do his work. So yeah, I mean, it's an interesting thing being a Christian, around people who aren't, or around people who even are, especially as a woman. I think there's a lot of expectations of Christian women and motherhood and things like that. That's why I'm so inspired by women who have, endeavors in faith like you, as well as being a mom. I think it's important to make our kids great kids to launch out into the world, but also to do our part to make that world better for when we launch them out into it.
Right. Right. 100%. Yeah. Okay. So I want to talk to you specifically about a couple of things out of the book. On page 287, if you guys haven't seen it already, I'll hold it up. I brought my copy. It is so, it's daunting. When this came from Amazon, I was like, wow, that's really heavy. And the box,
Right.
like how many books did I buy? So it's daunting, but really it's not. It's a quick read for the
If you
size
crack
of
it
book.
open, yeah, if you crack it open, you'll see, like, show
Yeah,
them the way I write. Yeah, there's not too much text per page. It's not
right.
like it's size 6 font. It's doable. In fact, a lot of people reach out and say that they read it in a night or two. And I know that they're telling the truth, because my husband, he doesn't really have too much time to read, with his work and everything, like, and all the obligations and responsibilities around the house, with us and the kids. But it's like he read it in 2 days, and he goes, I read your book. I read it in 2 days. And I was like, wait, what? And so now when people say I read it in a day, I read it in 2 days, I'm like, yep, you did, because I've seen
Yeah.
that firsthand. Like,
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be all day,
right,
right? So I mean, it can be in bits and pieces, and the way that
right,
you've like written it is
right.
very easy to
Oh, thank
be
you.
able to put it down and then pick it right back up,
They're
and
little
still like
essays,
jump back in.
for people who aren't super familiar with the book. So it starts off with little essays. The book is called Pray for Them, The True Story of a Racist White Christian Called to Black Seminary. And if you get nervous hearing that title, believe me, I was nervous to write it. So don't worry. We're in this together. I didn't want to write it. I know people get nervous to read it, but like, I'm really happy with the book that God revealed to me. I hit my knees and prayed every time before I wrote it, every time before I edited it, every time before I did anything with it. And to hear the responses of people and to see people like reading it, people send me pictures of them reading it on the beach, on planes, and it blows my mind where I'm like, oh my gosh, like that's my book.
Yeah.
It's out there in the world, and it's, but yeah, so there's a lot of parts in it. I know you were going to call out a certain
Yeah. So, okay.
portion.
Page 287, and I'll just read you what it says.
Hold
And
on, I'm going to grab mine so that I know what you're referencing.
okay.
Okay, 287.
287. I'll let you get to it.
I'm
What
good.
the other thing I
I'm
love
there.
about this is I have to have my glasses on to read anything, really.
Right.
But I was able to have my normal sunglasses on. I did not need my readers, and I was sitting out in the sun at the pool, and I could read it because the font is the perfect size.
Well, that's the thing is it's big font, it's spaced out. So I hear that a lot. They were like, they receive it and they're like, oh my gosh. And then they're in it halfway through by lunch, so
Yes,
it goes fast.
it does. It does. So, okay, this is what it says. We can't always think our way into taking the right action. So we must act our way into right thinking.
Yeah.
Okay, explain.
Okay, so I've been blessed with a lot of wise friends and teachers along the way. And that was one that really got to me, was this excerpt from my friend Stacy, mentor really. And she said, we can't always think our way into taking the right action, so we must act our way into right thinking. The best analogy I have for that is going to the gym. The prospect of going to the gym sounds awful to everybody, I'm pretty sure. Like nobody wants to do it. You don't want to get changed. You don't want to get in the car. You don't want to fill your water bottle. You certainly don't want to go on the cardio machines. But it's like once you're there, you're grateful that you were there. You're proud of yourself. You're happy
Yeah,
you went. And so it's like you can't think your way into going to the gym. You can't think your way always into eating right. You have to act in such a way until your thinking begins to align with it.
yeah,
And like it's helped me in so many regards in my life, like to not let the fear withhold your action, but you take the action
right.
and then somehow the fear just dissipates.
Yes. Yeah, that really, I had to read it a few different times, but I loved it. And I thought, oh, right now I gotta read, I gotta write this down so that I can ask her to, because I think that that's really important that a lot of us, like what you were just saying with fear, we just freeze right where we're
Right.
at because we don't know what that unknown looks like. Like if I take this step, then what might happen? And so it just freezes us and we do nothing.
Right.
But
And believe me, like, yeah, when I felt God calling me to New York Theological Seminary, knowing that it was a historically black school and that I'd probably be the only white student there in my class, which I was, believe me, nothing in my thinking thought that that was a very good idea either. I had all sorts of excuses and all sorts of stories built up, and you can read all about them here. And it's like, but I knew that God called me to go there.
yeah,
And am I going to keep avoiding Nineveh or am I going to go?
yeah,
And it's like the more I went, the more my life changed and improved and became something completely different than what I had known.
yeah,
And I think sometimes we're so uncomfortable that we don't want to get out of our comfort zone, but we don't realize that our comfort zone is a false God. If
right.
we can go about our day in our comfort zone, why do you need God?
Yep.
Honestly, like if you
Right.
go to the grocery store, you do everything in your normal day. Why do you need God if you're so comfortable with it? It's
Yeah.
only out on the water that we realize how much we need him. And it's really only there that we see his majesty and power in new ways.
Yeah.
Like the scenarios described in my book, I couldn't like look, I'm a very creative person. I have anxiety. I'm a very creative person in my thoughts. I'm also a writer, so like my imagination goes wild. And it's like the things that happened when I followed God and took the actions that he was asking me to take. Okay. Uh-oh. That's okay. Okay.
So when you took action.
Yeah. So, hold on, let me get where I was. I forget what I was saying. Um, it's only going outside of that comfort zone
Yeah.
where we can really see what God has in store for us. And by taking that action, then all of those stories, all those anxieties, you see them for what they are, which is just phantoms sent by the enemy
Yeah.
to keep you from pursuing God, you
Yeah.
know?
That comfort almost creates, or in the comfort, we can be very disobedient
Yeah.
because we're not taking the step that he's called us to take.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
honestly, I think sometimes, not all times, but sometimes if we're not pursuing the unfamiliar path that God has asked us to take, we will be given unfamiliar paths like for us to like unfamiliarity will be forced upon us. Like it's
Yeah.
part of the design of life. Nothing in life is going to stay the same, and so
Yeah.
we need to take that right action. When we feel called to Nineveh, you got to go, man, because you're putting yourself at risk and you're putting everyone else on your
Other.
boat at risk,
Yeah.
by
You're right.
not following God.
I think that the other part to that I love about Jonah and Nineveh is God was wanting to use Jonah. He could have changed Nineveh without Jonah, right? So when
Mm-hmm.
Jonah finally does go to Nineveh, he says like the bare minimum, and I think it's like 5 or 6 words. That's what he preaches as he walks straight across the 3 mile or 3 day walk, or whatever it is. I think that's right, across Nineveh. He does almost the bare minimum. But God wanted to use Jonah. It was almost as if God was saying, I'm going to give you a gift, Jonah. I'm going to open your eyes. There's so much more that you're going to get to see if you'll step out in this faith. And I think he does that in our lives now. Is he doesn't need us to accomplish what his goal is, but he is in constant inviting us to be a part of it in order to grow us closer to him. And I love that.
A
Yeah,
hundred
I
percent.
absolutely love that.
Absolutely.
Okay, so real quick, I know we're running close on time, but you bring up, and I think this is so important, that several times throughout the book, you talk about praying for others, which is the title, Pray for Them. A lot of times we want to pray prayers that are, Lord, Sally does not know, she doesn't understand how her behavior is, and Lord, so I need you to change Sally. And you're
Mm.
saying, mm-mm. I agree 100%. That is not the way that we should pray. I have seen this in my own life. And as soon as I would change that prayer to, Lord, I don't understand this relationship. It's hard. But I know that you love Sally. And that's just a made up name. I know that you love Sally. And so open my eyes, open my heart to see Sally and love Sally the way that you love and see her.
Mm.
It's basically, Lord, change me,
Mm-hmm.
not Lord, change Sally to be more like me so it fits with my in my life or where I'm at.
Absolutely. I think, man, I think I could go on for a while about all the different types of prayers that I thought were prayers that really aren't. I call them
Yeah.
Santa Claus prayers. Those are the God, gimme, 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 or
Yep.
the ransom note prayers, which are God, if you do this, then I'll do that, where we try to
Yep.
like barter with God. And then it's like the to-do list prayers, really, I think that the best prayer is just surrender,
Yeah.
like, and that's what you mentioned in your prayer right there, was just surrender. Let me love them the way you love them. Let me get behind you and follow your
Yeah.
lead. And for me, it's like praying praying for others also makes me aware of the things in myself that I might not be aware of. When I would pray for others in the book, and I would pray for their prosperity and their happiness, and for them to have great relationships, and for them to have, financial comfort and perfect health and all these things. It's like, sorry, this is my kids, they just hit the door. um, it's like I felt all this fear well up, which was, well, if they have more, then that means I have less.
Yeah.
And there's the lie. right? Like
Right.
there's the linchpin that
Yep.
really triggers a lot of people in our society to act certain ways. But like with God, it's not like that. With
Right.
God, there's plenty for everybody. I mean, look at the loaves and fishes, story. Even when there isn't plenty, there's enough. There's more than
Right.
enough. And it's like, yeah, I think I chose the title "Pray for Them" because it fits with the resounding theme of the story, but also I wanted something that would serve as a positive reminder for people, no matter what was being said
Right.
about the book. So I pictured I pictured former me, an atheist, an alcoholic, who hated God and everybody who mentioned him. I pictured the former me talking about this book, and I thought to myself, I want to make sure that even as the name of the book crosses that person's lips, that it's a blessing and that
Yeah.
it's a reminder. Pray for them, pray for them, pray for them, and it's become a theme in my life, which I never wanted to do. You say like pray for somebody, and it's like, but I want to pray for me. I want all my
Yeah.
stuff and all my needs, and it's only through praying for others that I find that I'm actually given that. When I
Right.
have anxiety and I'm on the verge of a panic attack, if in those moments I can remember to pray for others, it's wild how the situation changes and how that fear dissipates.
Right. Right. And even when we're praying blessings over, which you do a lot in the book, you're praying blessings over other people, then it almost is kind of that we self-reflect for a second and say, I have, like, yeah, bless them. I have
Mhm.
so much.
Yeah,
And it kind of like totally spins, and which is exactly what God does, right? That's always what he is doing, is
right.
drawing us closer to him.
And
Yeah.
even, there's a scene in the book where um I'm praying for others, and I don't have any of what I'm praying for them for. I'm very poor. I'm single with not a prospect of love on the horizon. I don't really have people in my life. I don't have fulfilling work. I'm not feeling particularly inspired or positive about anything in my life. And as I'm praying for these other people, it's like, yeah, I bet that they do want that because I want that. And I
Yeah.
believe that God is going to give it to me if I just give him time and myself. And so, yeah, I want it for others too. But
Yeah.
like, I know he's going to do this for me too.
Right.
I just got to give him a little bit of time and all of me. That's the recipe. Like,
Right.
a better life equals a little bit of time, all of me, and even just a little bit of God. And that's a much better life.
Right. Absolutely. Okay. What is next? I think everyone wants to know what is coming. What's next?
Well, I'm super psyched to be speaking at your event in September. So that's first.
Yeah.
Second, I'm feeling really passionate about getting more of my writing out there. I have a ton of short stories, a lot of which are fictional, that I have published, that I'm going to be publishing in the next couple months. And I really just want to keep putting out positive, hopeful content rooted in God and his goodness. I say that everything I create has God at the core. Even it could be a shred, it could be, a story of becoming an atheist to a believer to a Christian to seminary, like very serious. But it's like, I think that in our world, there's so much hunger for content, but not the content we've been thinking, not the Netflix content where you just stream and you kind of forget what you've watched for the last 6 hours. It's like hunger for real content, hunger for something substantive. And I
Yeah.
think if we can marry the two in story and in gospel, if we can bring that out there in a way that resonates with people in new ways, I think that that's really powerful, because I think that art is really universal, and if we can use that to serve God, then we can reach whole new groups of people. And that's kind of what I thought when God called me to do the Instagram, was like, there's people there, and they're
Yeah.
starving. Like, go
Yeah.
there and bring the food, go bring the
Yeah.
food. And so I'm gonna just go keep bringing food to people anyway they'll
Any
let
way that
me.
you can.
But yeah, so I'm gonna keep posting on Instagram. My husband and I are launching a marriage podcast here soon, which I'm super excited about. Like, we
I
already have
saw
so many
that.
funny stories that we're like excited to share.
Uh,
Um, But we're just hoping to bring people some hope and some encouragement and some gospel of Jesus Christ.
I love it. Well, we are so excited to see you and actually meet in person that is September the 17th
Yep.
in Chickamauga, Georgia. So northern Georgia, southern Tennessee, kind of right on that line. So I'm super excited to meet you and the whole family there,
I'm psyched.
and to hear more of this story and just kind of let you breathe some new life into all of us that get to hear you speak. So thank you for being obedient. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for all the seeds that you've planted, and
Oh,
thank you for writing this very vulnerable book that just let us all see what we can all see a little bit in ourselves anyway. So thank you. Like, I know that
thank you
God has
for the
already blessed you.
opportunity. Thank you for the opportunity. And, I learned a lot from writing the book, and really, growing up, they would always be like, what's the moral of the story? And for me, the moral of the story is if you give God your life, he will give you back something way, way better. And that's my story. So thank you for letting me share it.
Yeah, absolutely.